Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to the Ascension Playground. This is your friend Ursie. And today, April 2025, I thought I would come on and do like my friend Danny Shay does and just ramble about the stars. So you can see I'm up in the celestial heavens. Earlier in the year, I took a picture of my little child self and put some of the stars that are supporting me and those black holes as well in this year of 2025. It's go time. So I'm just going to do unscripted, just sharing and channeling from my heart, anything that wants to come out for a few stars. Since so many of you have received a free Starlight report or have had a quantum soul guidance healing session with me, or you're aware of Julia Balaz's wonderful calculator at galacticastrochart.com. Okay, so let's look at the stars. Now, this is in no specific order, just thought I'd start with Andromeda constellation. Okay, so what do we see here? There's this picture of a woman, a princess, chained to a rock in the celestial heavens. So when you have a grouping of stars called an asterism, we today call it a constellation. So this grouping, sometimes it changes throughout the course of history. But Andromeda, here she is, carrying the energy of the chained princess. Now, why is she chained? This is important when we look at the heavens to understand that basically the flow of energy, especially if you have an Andromeda soul connection in your natal star chart. Okay, so quickly on the story. Her mom was the queen and her father the king of Ethiopia. Okay, so you've got an Ethiopian king and queen. So, yes, so the city of Ethiopia or the country of Ethiopia was very prosperous. And the king named Cephas and his wife, the queen, Cassiopeia, just they prospered over the land. Everything was good, everything was abundant. The queen was more beautiful, the fairest of the land. And you can see in the heavens, her constellation is like a W, which is for the crown of the queen. So the king and queen are in the northern hemisphere, right up by the poles. And their story of masculine and feminine and how they work together. Well, here's where, chaos comes in because the queen boasted that not only was she beautiful, but her daughter, Andromeda, the princess of the king and queen, was more beautiful than the sea nymphs of Neptune. I think they're called Nereids. Anyway, the sea nymphs, because they were part of, the heavenly beings, they were not human. They complained to Neptune or Poseidon. And so the story goes that Neptune said, well, how can a mere human, even if she's a queen, boast that her daughter is more beautiful than these beautiful sea nymphs? And so to take revenge on behalf of these sea nymphs, the great monster Cetus was sent to ravage the city. So here comes like the whale or Cetus, the sea monster. And when you read some of the old stories, it wasn't a nice looking whale. It really was a sea monster. It looked pretty ugly. And I think if you look in Urania Mirror's card deck, you'll see Cetus. And so it looks kind of like a blob with big teeth and a whale tail. So anyway, it was ravaging. So as ships were trying to come in, it would disrupt it or kill people. So the king Cephas and his wife, the queen, went to an oracle, as the story goes, and saying, you have to make an offering, a sacrifice to appease Neptune or Poseidon. And so Andromeda was then chosen to be chained to the rock, to be devoured by Cetus. And so here she is at the coast with the rock. You've probably seen some paintings in art history of this very image. And so, so this is why freedom, liberation is so important, actually more important than oxygen in some cases. So the Andromeda constellation, the chained princess, we are trying to shift this idea of victim consciousness, right? I mean, she's, as the story goes, is ultimately saved by Perseus, who's flying around, sees what's going on, but before saving the princess Andromeda, goes to King Cephas and says, "Hey, I'll save her if you let me marry her." So there's like bartering. Meanwhile, the sea monster is coming with teeth bared towards Andromeda. So interesting, right? The role of the feminine, chained by no fault of her own, her mother's boasting. There's the wound of the mother, ancestrally, perhaps. And then the father negotiating her being married without even meeting Perseus. So there is a constellation of Perseus. He borrows shield, sword, and winged feet from Mercury and Apollo. So, yeah, here we go. Later, it was told that Athena, in her grace, really put this image of the chained princess Andromeda into the heavens. So we see different roles of the feminine, right? The one that is chained, the mother image of boasting, Athena, who is like putting this story in the heavens. And then those sea nymphs who were angry and convinced Neptune or Poseidon to take and avenge them. So it's interesting. So when we look at the stars, we see Alpheratz is at the head of, or the crown of the chained princess. This is a very interesting fixed star, as it is also shared as the navel of the flying Pegasus, the horse of Jupiter, right? So Alpheratz is shared by both the princess and the winged horse. And then she's got stars all over her body, her hands. Here we have Meroc, I've circled in red. Meroc sits at the girdle of the princess. So if you have Alpheratz, which is at 14 degrees of Aries, 39 minutes, it's the alpha star for the whole constellation. This could portend to understanding where is it that you absolutely have to have freedom and movement. If it's in your career house or vocation up in the 10th house, and let's say it is conjunct your sun, 14 degrees Aries sun with Alpheratz, you wouldn't choose a job necessarily where you were sitting in a cubicle, or having to work for someone else, perhaps. You'd choose a job where you'd have the freedom of movement and work independently. So Meroc is at the girdle. And this star, according to Bernadette Brady, if you have it within your star connections and soul connections, being receptive and fertile. That's interesting. It's the second brightest star in the constellation. So it is near the female parts of reproduction, but being receptive and fertile, more yin energy, could also be someone who creates a lot, maybe an artist, maybe a musician, a poet, depending on how it's aspected. It sits, Meroc, at 0 degrees of Taurus, 45 minutes. Okay. And then let's see, we're going from the head to the girdle. Now we're kind of like at the knee or the shin area with Titouan. So Titouan is 8 degrees of Taurus, 33 minutes. Don't really have anything that's been said about this particular star from Bernadette Brady, but I will tell you this part of the leg, it's one where it's like, yeah, action, let's go. It holds up the body. Okay, so maybe fortitude, Yeah. And then Almach sits at the foot of the princess. Almach is Gamma Andromeda constellation. And so the foot actually sits in water. So that's a marker when we start looking at the star stories for um, the foot. Her foot is able to tune into the collective unconscious, the emotional energies. How is the ocean feeling? Can you sense when danger's coming? Is the sea monster upon you? So it also is a marker, according to the, a couple thousand years ago, the Arabians around a night campfire would put an association with the desert lynx, a cat. So interesting, right? Like, how do these star energies show up in a lifetime? It's not prescriptive so much as here's the potentials. Um, was there something, about tuning in? If you have Almach in your career house, 14 degrees Taurus, 14 minutes, would you be someone who works as a therapist, or someone who really understands, or even advertising, like tuning into what is it that the collective wants and needs, and how to address that? Yeah. So, very interesting when we look at this idea of liberation and the role of the feminine. So, yeah. So, here we've got Andromeda. And later, I'll show you a picture of Perseus coming to save her. And her mother and father sit up in the northern parts of the near the pole. King and Queen Cephas and Cassiopeia in eternity up in the celestial heavens with their daughter chained. Interesting. Perhaps the star stories will go through another evolution where it's emancipation, proclamation. And so instead of the chained princess, she's transformed and radiant and liberated. That's the potential. How do we face our fears with support? Okay. I'm going to pause now and go check out some information with Lisa Royal Holt. I love her work that's been channeled in by Germaine and Sasha, her future Palladian self. Be right back. Okay, so now my head's back in the stars. So here is what the Galactic Heritage cards, meaning and commentaries that you get when you buy a card deck from Lisa Royal Holt. All right. And I think she is the quintessential person to look to for the channelings that came out to understand what's it all about, like our ancestral journey through the heavens. So not just Earth lifetimes, but beginning in Lyra, and then there's more. So this is a very interesting card deck, but it gives us a glimpse into energy and ways of being that go beyond polarity or duality consciousness that we have in 3D. In other words, it's like turning the station. So we go from and changing the vibration of that station. So here's what the card deck says about Andromeda. So first of all, they do point out that there's Andromeda star seeds, okay, like I just talked about, having soul connections. And then there's an Andromeda galaxy consciousness. So, in some of this writing that Lisa has done, says when we go quantum, inevitably we will meet this Andromedan consciousness, which is ultimately all about going with the flow. It's a flow state and not really holding onto anything as being static and consistent. It's all like being in the ocean, everything's moving and changing. And or you put your foot in the river and you can never put your foot in the same river twice. It's that kind of Andromedan level consciousness. Okay, so I'm just going to read from this booklet. Andromeda is very difficult to describe because it is a paradox. Even though human words can label some of the characteristics, the nature of their consciousness cannot be labeled. Please know that we are not talking about physical beings from Andromeda. Okay, so I already talked to you about the Milky Way galaxy and the mother galaxy Andromeda. There's this connection. And isn't it interesting? We're called the Milky Way, almost like from the breast milk of the Andromeda galaxy. Anyway, don't think about that too much. So, what she goes on? Let's see. Uh-huh. If you are working with Andromedan consciousness, you have to have a strong inner sense of groundedness. Isn't that interesting? Going with the flow, but still being centered. When everything around you changes, you still stay centered. You don't experience disorientation or confusion. One of the reasons your Earth reality is so stable is because you are on a planet with gravity in a space time continuum. If you were to go out into deep space, you would have none of those things to ground you. The only thing you would have is your inner sense of consciousness. When humans eventually experience space travel, you will need to rely on the inner senses. And then just a footnote here, a lot of the chaos that we're experiencing in 3D right now, globally, politically, culturally, borders, etc., this is all pushing us to go within, I believe, and just find our own center when everything is in flux. All right. When humans eventually experience space travel, you will need to rely on that inner sense. You will also interface more with Andromedan energy. It is very abstract, but it represents to you an opposite of how you interact with reality. That is why it is represented in this card, the card deck. Okay. So, there are some people on your world who are very connected with Andromedan energy. So for me, star points, especially profound sun, moon, the natal north and south nodes, the ascendant. Let's see. There are some people on your world who are very connected. They tend to be artists or sacred geometrists or metaphysicians. Metaphysicians. Have to enunciate better today. Okay, so if you think you're an Andromedan starseed and you don't want to check, you have your own way of checking, you can go within or you can do like the dowsing. Am I an Andromedan starseed? I think we're all like hybrids of a mixed recipe. So maybe the question is, do I have a strong energy that carries Andromedan star family consciousness in my aura? How's that for a question? And that's a yes or no. Okay. So, what does it say? It says, yes, tend to be artists or sacred geometrists or metaphysicians. This is an important balance for Earth. Earth needs people who can go beyond the limitations of physical reality while still being human beings. Gotta go check and see how many Andromedan star points I have in my chart. There's some people, like my friend Nancy Jean, she really rocks with purple. So if you find yourself that you're gravitated toward violet, purple, lavenders, if it's naturally for you to move in that type of color range, really check out Andromeda. For me, I seem to move towards the indigos and the blues and probably more Syrian on some level, but I probably have a drop or two of Andromeda as well. Let's see. So, lastly, she says, going back to the idea of the fragmentation, you then have the founders and Andromedan consciousness represented. So, before she even starts talking about Lyra, Sirius, all the other starseed families, Pleiadians, she starts with the founders. Well, there's Source, and then Source wanting to experience itself through fragmentation. So the founders, I think they're like those insectoid type looking beings. But anyway, that's just kind of a weird thing for us. Yeah. So, but then right after the founder, she starts talking about Andromeda. So that's the paradox. And a lot of times, what we're learning with Andromeda is a parallel timeline. And I might lose some of you when I say that, but just think science fiction movie. Okay, like everything, everywhere at once. I think that's the movie. Anyway, it's this parallel life ability with Andromeda. And as I'm saying that to you now, I don't have to find the star points. Knowing that there's a parallel um, place with Andromeda energy, it's almost like grandmother energy for me. For me, I feel like our human star self, human beings, definitely seated by the Pleiadians, the Sirians, the Arcturians were there to help hold the light. But our great grandmother was the Andromedans. So I think when you think linearly, like we do in 3D, you've got the founders and then Andromeda. Okay, so there is a difference between, there's three differences: Andromeda consciousness, living in this parallel timeline. Secondly, there's an Andromeda starseed coming from that constellation onto Earth and loving the violets and the pinks and the purple people. And then thirdly, this Andromeda consciousness. You know, the consciousness, I think, is different than this parallel access. The consciousness is basically a higher vibrational uplift. And then beyond that, there's another consciousness. So this is how like that spiral of evolution, I believe, works. You know, we go from duality consciousness to unity consciousness to, let's say, Andromeda consciousness. And so as we recognize our grandparents celestially, or great-great-grandparents or ancestors in the Galactic Heritage card deck, it's like they evolve as well. We help them, they help us. But the thing that's really a kind of a cosmic joke is it's always been all us. So we play that game of separation and then unity and then back to separation again. You know, one of the jokes I say oftentimes in the playground is back in the day, I think it was around 2000, maybe 2005 or 10, where the new word Pleiadian starseed came up. Like, I'm a Pleiadian, are you? Like, we would hush and kind of ask each other. And then the new word was Lyran. Oh, I'm a Lyran starseed. Are you? So, you know, today, now we're talking about Andromedan and all these other star seeds as our consciousness expands. For me, the energy is just in. You do go into meditation if you choose it, and whichever way you choose, if you do go within to find the answers and start doing much more about this like intergalactic sensing. I know I don't say Lisa Rowe Holt's name enough, but she just recently gave a free YouTube meditation where you lay down, you close your eyes, and you start calming, let's see, from your toes up, 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 and asking each of your parts to just relax and just relax and then relax more. And then she has, I'm kind of giving away the secret. She says, okay, now open up a little box on top of your head, like a little doorway. And that's you then from a soul level going out through the top of your head and just see where you might go. And if you know the names of your star families and star seeds, you can call a very specific group to come and assist you. If you feel comfortable with the angelic realm, call in your favorite archangels. Well, I've probably gone a little too long for some of you, but in a way, it's a beautiful game of life right now. And we're learning that the whole board, the game board, has shifted. It's like, oh, it went from flat to more like multi-dimensional. And that's the beautiful thing is, what is it to be multi-dimensional? And so as we learn and parse out, this is the story of Andromeda. This is the story of the galaxy. It's a beginning step to understanding more of the vastness and the fullness of where you as a soul being has been and what might be up for you and who might be there to support you. It's all about the love and support. Okay, everybody. Thanks so much for supporting the Ascension Playground as subscribers and for commenting. Hope to see you soon on the Ascension Playground. Bye for now.